What's up, everybody? It's the Kino Corner here. Time for a bit of a bonus video. So I've made over 100 videos on movies, all sorts of movies. I just came out with a video wherein I recommended 10 movies that I think you guys needed to watch. And so, I'm obviously a big movie guy, and I've had a lot of people asking me to show off my movie collection, my DVD, Blu-rays, 4K, Ultra HD collection, what have you. And so that's basically what we're going to do today. And I'm just going to go through all the movies and tell you which ones I like, which ones maybe I have but I don't quite like. And hopefully you approve of the collection. And hopefully maybe you learn about new movies that you might not have heard about before. So let's begin. On the top here, actually, the first thing I want to point out is, I have some of my props. I use this in my Batman video. And then this I used also. This is my Riddler mask. It's kind of cheap, but at the time that I was making my Batman video, I wasn't exactly making a whole lot of money off of YouTube. So I couldn't really go all out and get like the real thing. But it is what it is. We have my Grand Budapest Hotel book right here. It's a really good book. I didn't get the Isle of Dogs one, even though I know that's out. But I know what you're all probably looking at. And that is Possession by Andrei Zulawski. I actually got into Andrei Zulawski a few years ago through the movie Shamanka. I rented it from Videotech in South Pasadena when I was working in Pasadena for all of maybe a month. And I really loved his style. And so after that, I was looking for a Possession, and I was trying to find a good copy of it. And it was kind of difficult to find. And I saw that there was a new 4K restoration of it. But then when I looked at the 4K restoration, I noticed that the color grading was a bit off. So I wanted to get the Mondo release. So this is the Mondo release, and they only made 2,000 of these. And unfortunately, I wasn't going to pay $170 for a copy of this. But thankfully, Vinegar Syndrome, I guess, found a box of these movies. So I was able to snag a copy, and I got to say, Possession is one of my all-time favorites. I'll be doing a video on that very soon. And then this is my very first movie box set, Stanley Kubrick collection. So it goes from Spartacus to Eyes Wide Shut. So it doesn't have the 1950s era Kubrick, which is fine because that's on Criterion, and I have that over there. But this was like the box set that really turned me on to film. I got this when I was a teenager, so over 10 years ago at this point. And, I just dived into 2001: A Space Odyssey. A Clockwork Orange was like one of my favorites. Barry Lyndon, The Shining, Eyes Wide Shut, Dr. Strangelove, Full Metal Jacket, Lolita. I liked Lolita, but I have to say that the movie here that I really did not care for that much was Spartacus. Now, I know it's because Kubrick was brought on mid-production. It was more of a Kirk Douglas movie, and then there was all sorts of problems because Kirk Douglas wanted to control the set. So I just there's some great scenes in Spartacus, but it's definitely probably my least favorite Kubrick movie. But even still, this was such a great box set to have just as a kid getting into movies. Now, another great box set of mine that also has been very influential just in my filmmaking has been the John Cassavetes film collection. So that's Shadows, Faces, The Woman Under the Influence, The Killing of a Chinese Bookie, and Opening Night. I just really love the way that Cassavetes shoots. I love his almost docudrama sort of style, the graininess of the film that he uses. He's a great actor, and Gina Rollins, his wife, is just an amazing actress. And you might notice this ear here. This is from my eventual Blue Velvet video. I've been saying I'm going to do a Blue Velvet video for forever, but that's my ear for that. So we'll come on down, and because all my stuff is so low to the ground at my house. Now, my most prized possession, my favorite movie of all time. Actually, this movie is probably worth more than anything else that I own here, and that is Red Letter Media's Space Cop. Yeah, well, I did a podcast about Space Cop with Low Res Wonder Bread, and I will I'll leave a link to that in the description if you want to know more about Space Cop. Look, I love Red Letter Media, but Space Cop is a special movie. Now, we'll just go from left to right here. So this is the Ingmar Bergman box set from Criterion. And it has something like 34 Bergman movies in it. And it's, my one criticism of this set is that they show it in a kind of curated way. So how they present all the movies in there is curated. Like, oh, watch this with this and this with this, and that's where the discs are. But I would kind of rather it just be chronological, and then maybe have a spot in like the book that comes with it about like what a good way to watch it would be. But it's whatever. Bergman is great. Bergman's one of the masters. Classic, of course. Then this is the Wong Kar-wai box set, which I really got just to get a Blu-ray of 2046. And I got to say, I love Wong Kar-wai. 2046, In the Mood for Love, Fallen Angels, Chungking Express. I mean, he has just so many great films, and, those are included here. But this obviously also is a pretty controversial box set because they recolor graded the films. And I'm not really quite sure that the color grading was for the better. So I've actually been looking out for older copies of the Wong Kar-wai movies just to have versions of the film that are closer to how they were actually presented, when they first released. So now here are two of the Martin Scorsese World Cinema Project box sets. I haven't started making my way through number 3 yet, but I recently got through number 2, and I did a whole review of all the movies in my Telegram. And you probably also maybe saw it on my Letterboxd. But this one has In Shang, which is Filipino, Mysterious Object at Noon from Thailand, Revenge, which is, I think, Kazakh, it's Soviet Union, Limit, which is Brazilian silent movie, Law of the Border, which is like a Turkish Western, and then Taipei Story, which is from Edward Yang, who, if you know much about cinema, Edward Yang is like super awesome. So I definitely like this one. I'd say that my favorite movie from this box set was probably Taipei Story. I mean, Edward Yang, I just love him. But I really did like Mysterious Object at Noon by Apichat Pong Wersatha School, which I think is how you say his name. I might be wrong. But I enjoyed pretty much all the movies, except for Limit. I didn't really care for Limit that much. That was a difficult movie to get through. So I haven't watched movies in this one. I've been meaning to do that. I've been kind of watching horror movies recently. So probably after Halloween, I'll get to watching these and, eat my vegetables. This is the Essential Fellini collection. And I'm a big Fellini fan. So it's got Intervista, Variety Lights, The White Sheik, Eva Toloni, La Strada, Il Badone, Nights at Cabiria, La Dolce Vita, 8.5, Julia of the Spirits, Fellini's Satyricon, Roma, Amarcord, and The Ship Sails On. I think one of the lights just went out. And we're back. So I typically separate my movies by country and then by director and by year. But, there's going to be some maybe mistakes in that categorization, but let's start. So starting with Mexico, sadly, I really don't have that many Mexican movies. It's Roma by Alfonso Cuarón, and then Birdman, which I guess is American-Mexican co-production. These are pretty recent movies, and I'm sure that all of you guys who are watching know a lot about it. So here's a French-Canadian movie called Martyrs, and I'll actually be doing a video on this pretty soon. And this is from Umbrella Entertainment, which is a Australian company. And with this particular version of the movie, they only make 250 of these. So I was really quick to get on and get this version of Martyrs. Martyrs is this probably one of the few movies that really sort of disturbed me. And what I liked about it is that it's sort of torture porn, but it has a very interesting philosophical backing to it. so that it transcends just being torture porn. And I have 2 copies of it. One that I got like a while back, and then this is like the newest edition, newest restoration of it. So right here are all the Bresson movies in the Criterion collection. I have a whole video on Bresson. You can check that out. Bresson is one of my favorite filmmakers. He's probably, his theory on how films should be made has probably been one of the most influential on me and how I approach filmmaking. I would definitely say, Emancipate, Pickpocket, Mouchette, Au Hazard, Balthazar, L'Argent. You can watch any of them. They're all great, but just know that they're not like your typical movies. He has his own very particular style, which I love him for, but it might seem cold at first, but once you sort of, get to know him, you can really fall in love with his work. So then here is Jacques Tati, the box set from Criterion. So Jour de Fête, Monsieur Hulot's Holiday, Trafic, Playtime, Parade, and Mon Oncle. Tati, I kind of see as like a Chaplin-esque figure for France in the way that it's visual comedy. It's all visual gags, like Monsieur Hulot like hardly ever talks. But he kind of marries this visual comedy, this kind of slapstick comedy with like really kind of artistic filmmaking, amazing set design. Playtime, I think, is one of the greatest movies ever made. The 70 millimeter cinematography of it is just outstanding. The set design is just like otherworldly. And so it's just kind of like this clash between the high and low that I really quite like. I like quite a lot. The rules of the game, it's a great movie. Renoir is awesome. This is a movie they'll probably have you watch in film school. So, Beauty and the Beast and Orpheus. These are films by Jean Cocteau. And I gotta say, I like Cocteau, probably between Beauty and the Beast and Orpheus. I like Orpheus better, but I'm a sucker for the Orpheus myth. That's probably one of my favorite of the Greek myths. So this is Jean-Pierre Melville, Le Samurai, Army of Shadows, Le Cercle Rouge. There's plenty of other movies that he's made. I want to complete my collection of Melville, but this is what I have so far. And Le Cercle Rouge, I think this is the new 4K version of it. It's a great crime movie. Le Samurai, I talked about it in my video about Drive, and I think that's like one of the coolest like crime mob films I think ever made. And then Army of Shadows is definitely in my top 5 World War II movies of all time, as it's about the French resistance during World War II. And I thought that just the way that they do everything. Melville just has this way of being cool. Also, everything is so pretty. The characters are so awesome. I don't know. I just love his stuff. La Haine, Children of Paradise, classic. Beau Travail. This is, I think I said Beau Travail was basically day in the life of a Giga Chad, so if you're into that, check it out. It's Claire Denis. It's one of her better movies. We're getting to Truffaut. The 400 Blows and Day for Night. The 400 Blows, again, is like a movie that, your film school will make you watch, but I still think it's a masterpiece. And then Day for Night is actually on my, when you watch me and a normal video of mine, you'll notice I have a giant a Japanese poster of Day for Night. Day for Night is the most honest movie about filmmaking. So if you want to actually watch a movie that's about making a movie and it's like the most accurate, watch Day for Night for sure. So Elevator to the Gallows, amazing score. This has got just a really great score, and by Miles Davis. Jean Moreau stars in it. It's one of the earlier French New Wave films. It's this kind of jazzy crime film. There's like several different plot lines happening at the same time. It's one of the better of the French New Wave. Black Moon, it's also by Louis Malle. But Black Moon is weird as fuck. it is a fever dream of a movie. It's a weird film for sure. So I mean, I like weird movies, so you know. But yeah, I don't know how to describe it. Just go into it blind, I would say. Just go into it blind and try to make sense of it. Quai des Orfèvres by Clouzot. Clouzot, of course, is probably one of the classic French thriller directors. You know, he also did The Wages of Fear, and he did Diabolique. And Quai des Orfèvres is actually, it's been kind of a while since I've seen this. So protest. Okay, I am learning more about this. Yeah, because I watched this when I was watching all these like lesser known films from my video on the French Dispatch. So I kind of, you know, if I watch this, I'll probably remember more of it. But I kind of forgot like the story of it. Sorry. La Vérité, that's also Clouzot, I believe. Yeah, it's also Clouzot, and it stars Brigitte Bardot. And it's like about a tragic love story, but it's told like as a court case. And it's really interesting because it was playing into her celebrity persona at the time. And so it was kind of a tongue-in-cheek, but it's also just a really gripping, enthralling court, or like I mean, it's a court case, but it's also a like murder mystery type of movie. La Vérité I thought was fantastic. So if you want like a really just solid movie about like the unraveling of relationships, you know, watch this. So now we're moving into Eric Rohmer, and I have several box sets by him. So this is the Six Moral Tales, the Criterion box set, and then this is from Arrow. I had to have this. So these two box sets are imported. So Artificial Eye and Arrow from, I think, the UK. I had to get a region-free Blu-ray player, but I love Rohmer. This is Comedies and Proverbs. So, and then the Tales of the Four Seasons. So the Comedies and Proverbs are like all of his 80s movies. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 films. And then Tales of the Four Seasons of 4 movies. And then the 6 Moral Tales. I would just say with Rohmer, his movies are so easy to watch. You know, Claire's Knee is a great one. Just pop on. Like, Claire's Knee is really nice to watch. La Collectionneuse, My Night at Maud's, those are all in the 6 Moral Tales. But then now the Comedies and Proverbs are really like Pauline at the Beach. And then I just got the Tales of the Four Seasons in, but I'm really looking forward to, especially this season, watching an Autumn Tale or Autumn Story. So yeah, I'm a big Rohmer fan. I'm still making my way through his films, but great stuff. So then we have The Red Balloon, which you all probably have seen, or at least heard of. It's a short film. I only bought it, to use it in my Wes Anderson videos. So, it is what it is. It's a great short film. So now here's Godard. So Vivre sa vie, Band of Outsiders, Masculine, Feminine, and La Chinoise. I don't like Godard. I'm just going to come out and say that. I don't like any of these movies. I'm sorry. I keep trying to give Godard a chance, and I just, I've seen so many of his other films. I just don't like Godard. But I'll just leave it at that. La Chinoise, I like Jean-Pierre Léaud, and he's in La Chinoise, and he's in some of the others. I think maybe Masculine, Feminine. But yeah, I can't get into him. But who I do like is Maurice Pilat. So L'Enfance Nue and À Nos Amours are both great movies. Maurice Pilat, I think, is very underrated. À Nos Amours and L'Enfance Nue are both great films about sort of family dynamics, especially dysfunctional family dynamics. But Pilat has some other, like Under the Son of Satan, I think, is a fantastic movie about kind of a priest dealing with maybe a crisis of what he should be doing and a kind of a battle with Satan. And then Graduate Graduate First is fun, like slice of life teen drama. The Mouth Agape is an absolutely, it'll wreck you. So I'll definitely say, you guys, everyone should watch more films by Pilat. So La Piscine is Jacques Deray film that has Alain Delon in it, and that's really the only reason why I got it, because Alain Delon is super cool. The movie is okay. It's like it's like a sexy Southern France movie, whatever. it's fine. So here's my Gaspar Noé collection here. I Stand Alone, Irreversible, Climax. So this is the indicator version of Irreversible. Obviously I made a video on Irreversible and I Stand Alone. And I talked about Climax in my A24 video. I'm a big Gaspar Noé fan. I actually have my copies of Lux Eterna, and Vortex coming in the mail hopefully soon. So here's a movie I would definitely recommend to all of you, and that's Fantastic Planet. This is an animated film, French movie by René Laloux. And it's a bizarre kind of movie. I love the animation style, and it's about humans are pets and slaves in this world run by these giant blue people, and the humans then rebel. And it's kind of goes through the different stages of rebellion. Really interesting stuff. So now we get back here. We can come down here. Cameraman, can you see Jacques Demy? Can we see it? See the name? Okay, cool. So Jacques Demy, fantastic filmmaker. He was married to Agnes Varda. And we're still in focus?
The name is.
Okay, cool.
The red lines, right?
Yeah. And so Lola, Babe Angels. But my particular three favorites from Jacques Demy are The Umbrellas of Cherbourg, The Young Girls of Rochefort, and Donkey Skin. And Donkey Skin is kind of a take on like it's a Cinderella type story. It's by the same writer. But The Young Girls of Rochefort is just this absolutely has this energy to it. This musical that it's one of my favorite musicals. Gene Kelly's also in it. Great dancing, great music. Let me do crisscross applesauce style down here. Just getting comfy, just talking about movies. Am I in focus?
Your eyes, yes.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. So, Umbrellas of Cherbourg is just a heartbreaking opera. It's kind of, it's an opera at the end of the day. They sing the entire movie. The cinematography is absolutely wonderful. And the music actually for these movies is done by Michel Legrand, who's one of the best of the French composers. And his niece, I believe, is the lead singer of the pop band Beach House. So then we have Shoah here, going from, very bright and colorful movies. We got Shoah, which is about 9 hours long, movie about the Holocaust. And it doesn't use any sort of archival footage. So it's all interviews with survivors, with people in the towns next to the death camps, and with guards from the death camps. It's very riveting. Actually, I've seen it twice, so obviously, it's a really well-made movie. It's depressing, really depressing. And it transcends being just about the Holocaust to being about how people kind of deal with evil around them and how complicit a lot of people are. Decalogue. So we're getting into Kieślowski right here. Actually, I had my copy of Blind Chance, but I lent it to a friend and I never got it back. So Kieślowski right here. So Decalogue is, my channel actually started off as basically a Kieślowski fan channel. I have a whole bunch of videos on Decalogue and, the introduction to Kieślowski and all that. Decalogue, you just have to watch. You got to watch. Drop everything you're doing and watch Decalogue. It's 10 films. It's a TV series, sure, but it's basically 10 movies that the only thing that kind of binds them together is the fact that they all take place at the same apartment building. And each episode is basically a take on a different one of the 10 Commandments. Fantastic. It's Decalogue 1 especially it'll definitely stir up some emotions in you. But a lot of the Decalogues will. And then Decalogue 10 is a bit of a black comedy. But they all just have so much going for them. They're all beautiful. You know, he used great cinematographers in all of them. And if you're a Kieślowski fan, you'll notice that he's using a lot of the Kieślowski sort of regulars too, which, I also like. And Double Life of Veronique, and then the Three Colors trilogy. Three Colors trilogy just got a new 4K restoration. I just saw them actually on the big screen. Wonderful. If you can see the Three Colors trilogy on the big screen, you have to do that. So now, Andre Veda's Ashes and Diamonds. Of course, this is another just classic Polish movie. Andre Veda's great. And Ashes and Diamonds is a really good sort of introduction to Veda and his work. And then we have Cold War by Paweł Pawlikowski. And this was released on Amazon, I think. But I hate Amazon's compression for their movies. And since this movie has so many blacks in it, it has a lot of shadow. The compression really affects the shadows and the blacks in the frame, and it just ends up not looking great. So I bought the Blu-ray of it just so I could watch it and not have it like blocks and stuff in the shadows, like artifacting and whatnot. I didn't like that. The Tenant and Macbeth, that's Roman Polanski, but if I start talking about Roman Polanski, that'll be its own video. So we'll just kind of gloss over these good movies, but it's Polanski. So then we have Michael Haneke, and I believe this is all of his movies. I believe I have all of his films. So the Michael Haneke trilogy, which is The Seventh Continent, Benny's Video, and 71 Fragments of Chronology of Chance. These are DVDs, and they're old DVDs, so the quality is actually not too great. I'm really excited for the Criterion re-release of these three movies so that I can have them on Blu-ray, and they'll actually look good. How they look now on their DVDs is actually, the quality's not super great. I'm not that impressed, but the movies are still good. Funny Games, Piano Teacher, Code Unknown, Cachet, The White Ribbon, Amour, and Happy End. And I gotta say, probably my favorite out of these is, it's a toss-up between The Piano Teacher and The White Ribbon. Both, I think, are amazing. But Haneke I kind of see him as almost like a successor to Bresson and his style. But, he does different things. He's his own man, too, But I would definitely say if you haven't started, getting into Haneke yet, you should start today. So this has been Vendors. So this is the Road Trilogy box set: Alice in the Cities, Wrong Move, Kings of the Road, The American Friend, Paris, Texas, Wings of Desire, Until the End of the World. Again, I'm a huge Vendors fan. Until the End of the World, I made a video on 2 years ago or so. I don't know. I think this is a really underrated movie. But the Road Trilogy 2, Alice in the Cities, and Kings of the Road especially, I just love the way that Wim Wenders shows the road. When almost all of his films are road trip movies to some degree. And just the way that he films the road trips makes me always really want to go on a road trip, where it makes you feel there's a sense of freedom and a catharsis to how he just films roads. But Wings of Desire is also just fantastic film about angels on the Berlin Wall, before the Berlin Wall fell. Nick Cave also plays a role in there. Peter Falk, a.k.a. Columbo, is in it. But Bruno Ganz is the main character, and he falls in love with a woman, and he wants to become human. And it's a very kind of poetic story, and it goes between black and white and color. And the way that it does that, I think, was really great and really tasteful. And recently, Sufjan Stevens and Angelo D'Agostino released a song called Reach Out on their album A Beginner's Mind. I'm dog sitting right now, so if the dog comes in, he'll just be a guest on the show. And hey there. And yeah, so you can also listen to that song. It's a little interesting thing. So now we have two Herzog movies, Aguirre, The Wrath of God, and Bad Lieutenant Protocol, New Orleans. Bad Lieutenant Protocol, New Orleans, one of the all-time best Nick Cage performances. And then Aguirre, The Wrath of God, one of the all-time best Kinski performances. My favorite line from Aguirre, The Wrath of God is he says, "That man is a head teller than me. That can change." So then we have Yorgos Lanthimos, Dogtooth and the Killing of a Sacred Deer. Dogtooth is still my Dogtooth is still my favorite of his movies. Just so weird, and the story is basically that this family is like teaching their kids wrong, like all the rules and everything that they teach are just incorrect, and it's just like this weird, surrealist, absurd, dysfunctional family situation. And The Killing of a Sacred Deer is an A24 movie. Hard to Be a God, I got this one, but I haven't actually watched it yet. I'm excited to watch it, but I know it's a bit of an experience. So The Ascent, that's Larissa Shepitko, Ukrainian-Russian film director, and it's about Belarusian partisans in Belarus fighting the Nazis. And Come and See, by her husband, Ilum Klimov, is also about Belarusian partisans in Belarus fighting the Nazis. So it's, both of these were their final movies, The Ascent and Come and See. So that's kind of poetic. The Cranes Are Flying and Letter Never Sent by Mikhail Kalatazov, Georgian Soviet filmmaker. The Cranes Are Flying, I'd say, is one of my all-time favorite Soviet movies. It's about World War II and a romance during World War II and grief and death and all that good stuff. Letter Never Sent is about Soviet sort of geologists that go out to Siberia, and they're meant to test this, find, I forget what they're supposed to find, but they have to endure the elements. And as far as I know, the actors really had to endure a lot of elements for that. So here's a great epic. War and Peace by Sergei Bondarchuk. It's 7 hours long, but it's split up into 4 parts. So think of it as like a mini series. Over 120,000 actors. It's, shot on 65 millimeter film. They just went all out. They wanted to, the Soviets wanted to beat the Americans when it came to making these grand epics. And I think they kind of won with this. I mean, you got to watch it, but it really is, it's the best adaptation of War and Peace. It's certainly better than the American version. Let me put this back in. And now here we go. All my Tarkovsky movies. Actually, not all my Tarkovsky movies, all the Tarkovsky movies. I assume that most people who are fans of this channel are fans of Tarkovsky. Ivan's Childhood, Andrei Rublev, Solaris, Mir, Stalker, Nostalgia, The Sacrifice. Fantastic. 7 movies, but each one was a banger. My personal favorite is Mir. I just love how poetic it is, and it's so obviously a very personal movie for him, and that comes across very well. So that's my personal favorite, but I love all of his movies. I mean, Stalker is a great sci-fi. I'd say that my least favorite of his is Solaris. Andrei Rublev is awesome. I think that if you're trying to get a friend into Andrei Tarkovsky, you should probably start them off with Andrei Rublev or Ivan's Childhood. Those are the easiest to get into. And then over here we have Bergman, Persona, Fanny and Alexander. I talked about Bergman earlier. So we're going to move to the other one now. All right, guys. So now we're on to the Italian movies. We start off with Pasolini. And I don't know if you guys knew this, but I'm kind of a big fan of Pasolini. There's this movie called Salò, or The 120 Days of Sodom. And I notoriously hate this movie. Notoriously, I said it was worthless. There's nothing to be said in this movie. There's no way a YouTuber can make a 20-minute video on this movie talking about how great it actually is. For people in the comments who don't know, I'm being sarcastic. Salò is one of my favorite movies of all time. and it's a shock movie, sure, but I think that it has quite a lot to say. So then, I have Fellini movies, which I talked about my love for Fellini. The Gold of Naples, The Bicycle Thief. The Gold of Naples was actually a difficult movie to find. And it's like a omnibus film. It's like a whole bunch of short stories. The Bicycle Thief, again, if you go to film school, or if you go to any like top 10 movies you have to watch if you want to get into movies, they're going to tell you to watch The Bicycle Thief. So I'm not here to tell you to watch movies that literally everybody else is telling you to. So Il Sorpasso. This is actually a really great movie by Dino Risi, and it's a road trip movie through Italy, and it's hilarious. It's absolutely it's hilarious. It's fun. It's a comfort movie for me, and it was the main inspiration behind the movie Sideways, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. Okay, so let's see here. The Damned. The Damned is by Luchino Visconti, who also made Death in Venice. And this is a very dark movie about a fascist family and the kind of breakdown of that family during World War II. It's very stylized. It's very pretty. It's not exactly going to heighten your spirits in any kind of way. Not this movie. Not at all. Let me put that back in. Investigation of a Citizen Above Suspicion. I just talked about this, actually. I just mentioned this in my video, top 10 movie, or like 10 movies you absolutely have to see. That's definitely should be on your must watch. The Great Beauty, Paolo Sorrentino. I love Paolo Sorrentino. I also liked his show, The Young Pope, and his movie before The Great Beauty, Il Divo. And his movie for Netflix recently called The Hand of God, I thought was also very good. Sorrentino, to me, feels like a modern Fellini in a lot of ways. And The Great Beauty definitely feels sort of like a modern La Dolce Vita. And it's about like the high life, but also the kind of vacuousness of that. And it's about the main character kind of soul searching and seeing what actually matters in life, but it's amidst this very sort of maximalist kind of style of filmmaking. Now we got Dario Argento. I've been watching a lot of his stuff because it's Halloween season, So Cat o' Nine Tails, Deep Red, Suspiria, Tenebrae, Phenomena. My favorite out of these, actually my favorite Argento, and maybe it's Deep Red, but Phenomena is definitely up there, and also Opera is. I don't have a copy of Opera, but Opera might be up there too. All of his movies, like, they're so fun. I love the style of his films. I love the POV shots, the black leather gloves, the super bloody violence. I'm a sucker for giallo. Suspiria is like a really just pretty movie too. The colors in it are very Baroque. They're very, they pop, they're saturated, and it just really sets the vibe really well. I'd say that like Argento to me is kind of like Hitchcock if Hitchcock cared way more just about vibes and plot. I don't know if that makes much sense, but that's kind of how I feel. And Phenomena almost feels like an anime movie, but in real life. The whole girl school thing. She has a power. She's telepathically linked to insects, and she's like working with these flies to find dead bodies to try to find the killer. Like, it's kind of an insane story, but for me it works. So, I guess that's all that matters. Don't Torture a Duckling by Lucio Fulci. I just started getting into Fulci. So I haven't seen many of his other movies, but Don't Torture a Duckling is about a serial killer who is killing like 10 to 12-year-old boys, so like young boys. And it's in the small Italian village. But really what the movie seems to be about, at least to me, is how the mob mentality kind of starts to blame the people that are seen as strange, the people that are seen as the other. And when the other gets blamed, innocent people get killed. I think that most of the movie is done pretty tastefully. It does kind of get close to being sleazy, but I don't think it ever feels that sleazy. It's reserved enough to not get all the way. The Last Emperor by Bertolucci. Actually, this isn't one of my favorite Bertolucci's. I mean, The Conformist is still my favorite Bertolucci, but The Last Emperor is still a very pretty movie. That gets us into some of the Chinese films. Men Behind the Sun. Men Behind the Sun is, oof. That is a movie that is actually really disturbing. And I mean, like, I lost my appetite when watching this movie. You know, it's about Unit 731, but they use like real bodies in it, like a real body parts. There's an autopsy or a vivisection of a young boy, and they used a real corpse of like a little kid. There's actual like animal abuse in the film. It is really intense. I would tell most people not to watch it. It brings up some actually very interesting ethical questions about filmmaking. About like, I know that Unit 731 did a lot of like really evil stuff, and I know that they pretty much all got away with it as well. And so I understand wanting to have that impact on the viewer by showing them something that disgusts them, by something that actually disturbs them to their core. But is it worth maybe, you know, is the animal abuse worth it? Is it worth using real body parts? Like, I don't know, actually. I think that's an interesting discussion to be had. I'd say that most people would say no, but I could also see the argument from the other side. Hard Boiled. Look, if you like action, you like John Woo. If you like John Woo, you love Hard Boiled. That's all I can say. Brighter Summer Day by Edward Yang. Of course, I said earlier, I have a love for Yang. Memories of Murder, Okja, that's Bong Joon-ho. Memories of Murder is my favorite Bong Joon-ho movie. And Parasite, you know, I made a video on Parasite a while back. I really liked Parasite as well, and Snowpiercer, and I'm excited for his next one. So here's Kurosawa, you know, it's Rashomon, Ikiru, Seven Samurai, Throne of Blood, Yojimbo, Sanjuro, Kagemusha. I mean, it's Kurosawa, man. Like, I love samurai movies. Rashomon, I made a video on that. The video did not do very well. Ikiru is just, you know, one of the best tearjerkers, I think, of all time, about a bureaucrat who wants to build a schoolyard. Throne of Blood is probably my favorite Macbeth adaptation. Yojimbo and Sanjuro are just awesome. Awesome samurai films. And then Kagemusha is, you know, one of his like later epics, and it definitely is like a later Kurosawa, but it's still fantastic. And I'm glad that George Lucas and was it Steven Spielberg were able to secure funding for it. So we have Oshima here, so In the Realm of the Senses, and Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence. Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence is a really great movie, great performance by David Bowie. In the Realm of the Senses, you know, I bought this because people told me that it was like this kind of edgy art film, and it's just porn. I was just watching it. I was watching it the whole time, and I'm like sitting on the couch, and I'm go, okay, so when is this going to become like not porn, but it's pretty much just porn. So maybe it's a little weird that I have it here, but on display. I'll just tell people who come that it's a Japanese, you know, old Japanese art film, and I just won't tell them anything more about that. Between you and me, just, you know, don't rat me out. Okay, well, Larry has decided to join us to also talk about these movies. I am running out of. Okay, so Larry has decided to join us to talk about these movies. So let me just move on to Human Condition, Miyazaki. He also made excuse me. So Larry decided to join us to talk about these movies. So let me move on. Kobayashi, The Human Condition. Kobayashi also made Harakiri. He's definitely one of the masters, I would say, of Japanese cinema. The Human Condition are 3 movies about World War II, and they star Takashi Nakadai. I think that is the Tatsuya Nakadai, and it's about basically a man who is idealistic, kind of being broken by Imperial Japan and by the war, It's riveting. It's harrowing. It's great stuff. You'll feel super depressed after watching all three, after 10 hours of movie watching. So do it. And then Patriotism by Yukio Mishima. This is basically feeding into Mishima's fetish when it comes to sex and death. And so it's all about harakiri, as you would probably guess from Mishima. But you know what? The man did it. The man did it in real life. So, he wasn't just LARPing, I guess. He also, is a good writer. Lady Snowblood. This very much influenced Kill Bill. It's a fun movie about a woman on a mission of revenge. You can hear the dog probably lapping up water in the background and walking around. Houseu. I watch this every Halloween. It's just a batshit insane, just kind of surrealist Japanese horror movie, but it honestly, I think, is a lot more fun than it is scary. I don't really find it scary, but I find it hilarious, just in its absurdity. I haven't actually seen Vengeance is Mine or Sailor Suit Machine Gun. I just recently bought those, so I'm excited to check those out. Ringu really freaked me out as a kid. And then Afterlife, I'm a big Kurita fan. He's awesome. Perfect Blue, did a video on that. Satoshi Kon, Millennium Actress. Satoshi Kon, I think, is probably my favorite of the anime directors when it comes to his films. Perfect Blue, Millennium Actress, Tokyo Godfathers. I mean, I love all of them. Paprika, I thought, was a little too shallow. It was maybe the prettiest of his movies, but I thought it was pretty shallow. My Neighbor Totoro and Grave of the Fireflies. I have them next to each other because they actually released with each other. And, they came out at the same time. They actually, I think, were made both like at the same time in the same studio. My Neighbor Totoro, I think, is great. I'm not actually a huge fan of Grave of the Fireflies. Maybe that's a hot take, but I think it tries way too hard to really pull at your heartstrings. And I don't know. There are movies like Ikaru will make me cry like a little baby, but Grave of the Fireflies just didn't do it for me. Cowboy Bebop. Look, if you're going to have anime, you got to have Cowboy Bebop. That's just, that's the rules. Okay. Belle. I really liked Belle from last year. The Apu trilogy. So, Pather Panchali, Apur Sansar, and Aparachito. This is kind of I see this as like the Indian Boyhood. 3 movies that kind of follow this one boy as he's growing up to be a man and all the tragedy and hardships that he faces. But it's a very human trilogy of films and beautiful cinematography, great acting, and it's kind of amazing to think that Satyajit Ray's Pather Panchali was like his first movie, and it has also a great soundtrack by Ravi Shankar. The Holy Mountain, of course, it's Jodorowsky, so it's weird. The Holy Mountain is actually not my favorite Jodorowsky. I would say that El Topo is my favorite Jodorowsky, but I haven't bought El Topo yet. No, I just talked about No in my video, so I'll just pass on. Spencer shot on 16mm. It looks so good on 16mm. And Kristen Stewart is a very underrated actress. I mean, there's tons of people that are like, oh, Kristen Stewart's awesome. I do think that Kristen Stewart deserved the best actress for Spencer. Her performance in this was fantastic. And the way that the movie's shot, it goes from feeling like a drama. It never gets too stuffy. It sometimes feels almost like a horror movie in parts. I thought it was really interesting how it was shot and edited. Satan Tango. This is Belatar. I call this the final boss of art movies because it's 7.5 hours long. And it pretty much takes place, the first 4.5 hours take place in one day. And then the next 3 hours take place in the next day. It's a very slow movie. Each shot is at least 5 minutes long. I think the longest shot's 11 or 12 minutes long because that's how long, a real film will last for. Very slow, but I still love it. I still think it's a masterpiece. I love Belatar. The Cremator. The Cremator is really, really freaking creepy. It's about a guy who runs a crematorium, and he like burns dead bodies in the Czech Republic or Czechoslovakia, and in Prague, and he's like obsessed with the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and he thinks that like by turning them to ash he like releases their souls, but then he starts to think about how he needs to like liberate the souls of more and more people, and then it's taking place kind of on the verge of World War II. So then the Germans employ him to, well, you can probably see where that's going. I made a very short video on this. Jan Schwenkmeyer's Alice. I made a very short video on this earlier this year. It's Alice in Wonderland, but a real good, like, surrealist telling of it, and the stop motion animation for it is sick. So definitely gotta check that out. Underground by Amir Costa Rica. I just talked about this actually in my last video, so it's not fitting in. I want this to fit in. Well, while I am doing this, I'll just talk about the next movie. It's a Serbian film. Look, if you don't know what a Serbian film is, you might not. There we go. You might not want to know more. It's not a film that everybody should watch. I will say that. It's maybe not a film for everyone. It's... No, I won't say anything more in a Serbian film. If you know about the movie, you probably know about it through the internet. The Tribe, I just talked about this also in my latest video. So, go check that out. Vampire, this is Carl Theodor Dreyer. I thought I had a copy of Passion of Joan of Arc, but maybe I lost it or something. Vampire, it's a great kind of surreal vampire, like early cinema vampire film. I think it's 1932. Breaking the Waves, Dogville, Antichrist, The House that Jack Built, Lars von Trier. Dude, Lars von Trier is one of the masters. Antichrist is one of my all-time favorite movies. The House that Jack Built is so awesome. It's I just love Lars von Trier. And that's all I can say is that I just love Lars von Trier. So we're going on to Pusher and Drive. So this is Nicholas Winding Refn. Drive, obviously, is, Ryan Gosling is literally me, This is how it goes. Pusher, but this is Pusher 2, and this is the one that stars Mads Mikkelsen. And this was actually, I think, one of my first Mads Mikkelsen movies. I watched Drive when it came out in the theater, and then I went back and I just binged all of Refn's earlier films. So I watched the Pusher trilogy, I watched Bleeder, Valhalla Rising, and Bronson. Pusher 2 really stood out to me. It's a really, really good performance by Mads Mikkelsen, and but there's some kind of sexually explicit scenes in it. And I remember that the first time I watched it, I was sitting in the middle at the Atlanta airport, and these scenes came up. I was on my laptop, and I started freaking out, trying to hide it, and but I was still invested in the story, but I was also being very awkward about it for sure. The Celebration. This is Thomas Vinterberg, and this is, as far as I know, one of his first movies, and this is a Dogma 95 film. Thomas Vinterberg is the director of really one of my favorite films from the last 10 years called Another Round, but also The Hunt. Both starred Mads Mikkelsen. Mads Mikkelsen's not in The Celebration, but The Celebration is shot on mini DV, and it's a Dogma film, but it's about a guy. It's about this family reunion, and the son gets up. And his son's in his 30s. He gets up, and it's the patriarch's sort of birthday. And he gets up and he says, "My dad molested me when I was a kid," and the whole family turns against him, and it turns in this really sort of tense family drama. The Worst Person in the World. That's my favorite movie of 2021. I love Trier. Oslo, August 31st. Saw that on 35 millimeter a couple months ago. He's a great filmmaker. I love the two actors that they have in here. The one actor who's actually a doctor in real life. It's Anders Danielsen Lee. Yeah, but the main actress, Rensfaye, or I don't know really how to say her name. she does a great job. It's such a good film, just about the kind of melancholy of that like late 20s, early 30s. When you're really trying to kind of build a life. Hitchcock's Hitchcock, right? He's like the master of suspense, right? The man who knew too much. Awesome movie. 34 version, that is. Vertigo's definitely up there for me. I think though, maybe my favorite Hitchcock is North by Northwest. It's just like a really fun, comfy movie. So now we have Nicholas Roeg, even though performance is co-directed by Donald Cameron. This is a weird ass movie. It's like a guy in the mafia goes on the run, and he ends up living with Mick Jagger, who's like this rock star who made a deal with the devil, but he needs a demon. Like he's like, and he starts like absorbing the essence of like this mafia member who's on the run. And it's a semi like musical. It's weird. I love it. And Walkabout is it's a beautiful tragic movie, that takes place in the outback. I can't talk about any of these movies for too long. All these movies I could spend so much time talking about. I just have to kind of run through them. Don't Look Now, probably the best sex scene of all time. The Man Who Fell to Earth, probably easily David Bowie's best, performance. Easily David Bowie's best performance. Insignificance, it's pretty good. I love Rogue. So now we hear Powell and Pressburger. My favorite of the Powell and Pressburgers is, it's a toss-up between The Red Shoes and The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp. They were some of the first filmmakers to be shooting Technicolor, and they were working with Jack Cardiff back then. So it's like these. If you like the Technicolor aesthetic, these movies really have like the epitome of that Technicolor aesthetic. The colors really pop. The colors are all beautiful. The costume, everything about the movie is just so aesthetically pleasing. I would definitely suggest watching all those. Hard Day's Night, very fun movie. Hey, like everybody else, I'm a Beatles fan, okay? And Hard Day's Night is just super fun. If, that's Malcolm McDowell. It's color in black and white, and it's a Literally Me movie. I have a video, I think, about like 10 literally underrated Literally Me movies. I think If is in that. The Wicker Man, this is the original Wicker Man, the Robin Hardy version from the 70s, and I watch this every Halloween. If you want a very cut down version of The Wicker Man, if you don't feel like watching the whole movie, you can just watch the music video for Radiohead song Burn the Witch. That's The Wicker Man. Naked has to be one of my all-time favorites, by Mike Leigh. David Thewlis plays in it, and it's it starts off with David Thewlis raping this girl in this alleyway, and then he runs from, I think it's Manchester to London to stay with his ex-girlfriend. He starts sleeping with his ex-girlfriend's roommate. He's just one of the most acidic, just unlikable characters. Yet David Thewlis' performance just makes him so just there's a magnetism to him. And he goes on this nighttime odyssey, and it's a movie that's not really so much about stories. It's about about character, and the characters are all very. There's so much to each of the characters, and it's got a mix of really dark dark moments, but also incredibly funny moments as well. Definitely you got to watch Naked. Shallow Grave, that's I think Danny Boyle's first movie. It's fun. It's a fun first movie. Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. So I have it in the British section, even though I know it's a Swedish director. But I remember I took my friends to go see Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy when I was in high school, and they were all disappointed. They all thought it sucked because they wanted Jason Bourne. And I realized at that point that I probably should just go to the movies alone. Under the Skin. I talked about Under the Skin a bit in my A24 video. I'm a big fan. That's what I can say. I'm a big fan. Under the Skin, Scarlett Johansson, in her peak. I guess. Like really, really great Scarlett Johansson role. She plays a pretty interesting sort of villain character, anti-hero. Like she's an alien who is seducing men to steal their skin. It's a fun movie, and the way that it's shot, Jonathan Glazer, who made one of my favorite Radiohead music videos, Street Spirit Fade Out. He shot it in a way that kind of blends reality with fiction. So very interesting movie, very highly rated. Following, one of my first YouTube videos was on Following. Tenet sucked. I didn't like Tenet. So here's Terry Gilliam. My favorite of Terry Gilliam is Brazil. I mean, Brazil's like, I don't know. As far as dystopian movies go, I don't know how you can get very much better than Brazil. But Terry Gilliam's Leaving Las Vegas, or Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, 12 Monkeys are also, I think, masterpieces. And I think that Time Bandits is really fun. Jabberwocky is pretty fun. And I have Terry Jones' Life of Brian. I mean, I grew up watching Monty Python, right? Life of Brian's hilarious. And then at the end, Overlord. Talked about Overlord in my last video, so I guess go check that out. And here we go, Caligula. I haven't actually watched Caligula, but I'm looking for some friends to watch it with. I feel like this is a movie you have to watch like with a lot of friends, or maybe your parents. I feel like it's a movie you got to watch like with your friends or your parents. A Hole in the Ground. Again, I talked about this on my A24 video. Prayer Before Dawn. I think this is maybe one of A24's like most underrated movies, in that it's about it's based on a true story about a like British guy in a Thai, I believe it's one of Thailand's most violent prisons, and he becomes a boxer in it. It is intense. It's a very intense movie, but I gotta say, I was mesmerized by it. I thought it was fantastic, and I'm really surprised that the A24 fans don't like cite this as like one of the better A24 movies. So we have Kubrick down here, Killing, Paths of Glory. Killer's Kiss is also included in this version. Doctor Strangelove, Clockwork Orange, Barry Lyndon. Look, again, if you're watching this channel, you know who Kubrick is. You've probably seen these movies. Saint Maud. Saint Maud actually I thought was, it surprised me. I liked it quite a bit. Liked it more than I thought I would. The Road Warrior, Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. I don't know where my copy of the original Mad Max is. I had all three. But, I love Mad Max. We've got Peter Weir, Picnic at Hanging Rock, The Last Wave, Master and Commander. I'm missing my copy of Truman Show and Dead Poet Society, but, it is what it is. The Last Wave is Australian movie that I think everybody should watch. Wake and Fright might be one of my all-time favorite Australian movies. It's a teacher gets stranded in this town called the Yabba, and it's like in the outback, and it becomes like this nightmarish fever dream horror drama of him basically like being stuck in this weird small town. Now we're in my Vincent Gallo section, Buffalo 66 and The Brown Bunny. I just saw The Brown Bunny in 35mm with Ariel Pink, like back when he was showing it at the New Beverly in LA. I mean, I've talked about Buffalo 66, and I know I talk about Vincent Gallo a lot on this channel, but both these films I think are fantastic, and I think that, it's honestly like I'm glad that people are now seeing The Brown Bunny as being a great film, because it was definitely panned when it came out. So now we're in the Richard Kelly section. Got Donnie Darko here and Southland Tales. I love Donnie Darko. I don't love Southland Tales. And I won't go too much on Donnie Darko because I'm writing a video on that right now, so I'll leave that for the video. My Kevin Smith collection, which is just Mallrats and Tusk. I have Mallrats because the one of the leads from Mallrats, Jeremy London, was in my very first movie, Wasted Hours. So I picked up the Arrow copy of Mallrats, as a, it's like, okay, it's just, I guess that's the reason. But Tusk, I hated Tusk. I'm actually still surprised I have the Blu-ray of Tusk still, because after I made my A24 video, I was really tempted to just make a video of me destroying my copy of Tusk. So I picked this up at a thrift store, and it's a Criterion Collection version of the Beastie Boys music videos. I mean, I like Beastie Boys, so... but I didn't know that they were in the Criterion Collection, or their music videos were. You know, it's interesting. Spike Jonze, Where the Wild Things Are, Her. I should probably get a copy of... Wait, I thought I had... No, I have a copy of Adaptation. I don't know where I put my copy of Adaptation, though. But yeah, Adaptation is still probably my favorite Spike Jonze. I don't know, maybe being John Malkovich, but Her also is awesome. Whit Stillman trilogy here, Metropolitan, Barcelona, Last Days of Disco. Whit Stillman, probably like, the characters in Whit Stillman are definitely close to maybe who I am in real life and how my friends are. And so I see a lot of, I definitely see a lot of like myself and my friends' groups in the Whit Stillman films. Barcelona is probably my favorite of the three. I really love Chris Eigeman and Taylor Nichols, and Barcelona really kind of brings out the like a really good, like the great combination of the two of them. So David Lynch, The Art Life, and then a whole bunch of David Lynch movies. You know that I was a David Lynch fan. I got the version of Dune. You know, I actually kind of like Dune. I actually kind of like it. It has a lot of soul to it. But Blue Velvet is still my favorite of the Lynch films. Mulholland Drive might be a very close second. And there's something really comfy about a lot of Lynch movies. There's something really comfy about them. We have Robert Eggers. Look, I've talked about Eggers already probably too much on my channel, so I'll just skip past. Cronenberg, Videodrome, Naked Lunch, Crash. And Crash, actually, I watched in my school library and university. And if you know anything about Crash, you know that's probably not a movie you should watch somewhere in public. But I told myself, if anybody asks, I am doing research for school, and that this is a piece of art. So that's how I would cope. American History X and History of Violence. You know it. Sigma male movie. All right, we all know it. Then the Safdies, of course. Daddy Longlegs, Good Time, Uncut Gems. Uncut Gems was I made a video on Uncut Gems that basically kind of catapulted me into actually being a real YouTuber. So shout out to Uncut Gems. So now here, it's not really by director or anything. Let me pull this over. This is all sort of just, it starts to get by the director down here, but this is mostly just random movies that I have in chronological order, or I try to have them in chronological order. So I'm just gonna get through these as quickly as possible. We got Sullivan's Travels. That's Preston Sturges. A really funny movie. Night Train to Munich. Carol Reed. Double Indemnity. You got to watch Double Indemnity. It's one of the classic noirs. Ernest Hemingway's The Killers. Nightmare Alley. The original Nightmare Alley. I did a video on both the original and the new one. The Night of the Hunter. Amazing Robert Mitchum performance. The Searchers. Probably John Wayne's best movie. Written on the Wind. Douglas Sirk. Come on. Sweet Smell of Success. That's Burt Lancaster and Tony Curtis. And it's this really kind of like dark, acidic noir about journalists. It's such a fun film. It's a mad world, which is one of my favorite like comedy epics. Comedy epic sounds like something that shouldn't exist, but it does. It's great. Irma la Douce, that's Billy Wilder. And that's a fun movie. Jack Lemmon and Shirley MacLaine. Jack Lemmon is a cop in Paris who falls in love with Shirley MacLaine, who is a prostitute, but he starts like dressing up as a John to basically because he's in love with her and he doesn't want her being with anybody else. Festival, that's music festival documentary. Don't Look Back, that's D.A. Pennebaker. That's probably the movie on Bob Dylan is Don't Look Back. the Monterey Pop Film Festival or Monterey Pop Music Festival. Just a lot of really great performances, in here. Jimi Hendrix, a very famous Jimi Hendrix performance. The Swimmer is a really fun movie. Depressing. I mean, I think a lot of my movies kind of fall into that category of depressing, right? The Swimmer is a really fun movie. Burt Lancaster swims his way home. And so how he swims his way home is I'm having so many issues with just putting these back in. You are going to fit in. I just want to fit in. Okay, we're gonna do it. There we. Oh, okay. You know what? I'll just let's have this. That's good. It's a nice little addition too. He swims his way home by going into different swimming pools on his way home, and through that he interacts with people that he's known in the past, and he actually finds out more about his past. So we learn more and more about him, and we learn more about his life, and not everything is what it seems. Hang 'em High. That's the thing I would say about Hang 'em High, the Clint Eastwood movie, or I don't know who directed it, but Clint Eastwood stars in it. It would be a great Western, but I would cut out all the romance stuff. The romance stuff is so cheesy in that movie. Night of the Living Dead, that's the classic zombie movie. I think it's okay. Like, I was saying to my friend earlier today that I think that the reason why it's so popular is that it kind of got accidentally put in the public domain, so people could like use it everywhere, or television stations could show it all the time. But it's definitely like more on the amateur side. The ending is really great, but as a whole, it's definitely very like low budget, and you can really tell. Midnight Cowboy is, again, there's a reason it won Best Picture. First X-rated movie to win Best Picture, and that's a movie that I remember watching, and I felt so sad after, but yet I go back to it all the time. And the Harry Nilsson song, Everybody's Talking, is also just a really great song. And every time I hear that song, I just think about the opening to Midnight Cowboy. Joe, so Oki's Weird Stories told me to get Joe, or told me to watch Joe. I still haven't gotten around to watching it, so sorry. Gimme Shelter. This might be my favorite music doc about the Rolling Stones tour that ended up in San Francisco, where the guy tried to assassinate Mick Jagger, and they got that all on film for this documentary. Two Lane Blacktop, I recently bought this, haven't watched it yet though. Pink Flamingos, this is John Waters, and it's one large shitpost of a movie. It's hilarious. It's obviously like super edgy, and it's gross, and he's trying to break every taboo he can, but at the same time I think it's still really funny, and I think that there are things that are still edgy even for today. So the fact that he made this in the early 70s and it's still edgy today, I mean, says, he was ahead of his time. Painter's Painting. This is a documentary about like postmodern and modernist artists, showing how they work and them kind of talking about their processes. I'm not really into those styles of art, but this documentary did allow me to appreciate a lot of that. High Plains Drifter. This is Clint Eastwood plays as like a spirit, he's like a vengeful spirit who comes to a town and he makes the town hell. Classic Clint Eastwood Western. Unforgiven, the outlaw Josie Wales. Unforgiven, I think, won Best Picture, and it's kind of a deconstruction of the Western, or it's almost like it's a very mature Western, I will say. Gene Hackman plays a really great antagonist. So our camera just died, but we're back. Let's get back to it. Love and Death, it's Woody Allen. Again, look, I'm a Woody Allen fan, what can I say? I have a lot more of his movies on DVD, but I think I left them at my place in Florida. So they're not here, but I have this edition of Love and Death, which I heard is like some limited edition, but I don't know. It just seems like regular Blu-ray to me. All That Jazz by Bob Fosse, starring Roy Scheider. This might be one of my, if not my favorite musical. It's like a movie about a Broadway play being made. Roy Scheider gives a powerhouse performance. Just everything about that movie is great. Michael Cimino's Heaven's Gate. Heaven's Gate. What a movie. The movie that killed United Artists. The movie that was like so bloated. Look at this, 216 minutes long. I think there was a cut of it that was longer. And it was just Michael Cimino basically doing what he wanted and the studio not interfering enough. You know, often we hear stories about how studio interference ruins movies. This is a case where the studio probably needed to interfere. Hopscotch with Walter Matthau. I used to watch this movie with my grandpa all the time. It's a fun spy, comedy. It's very much kind of reminds me of Charade. Walter Matthau's in both of them. If you like Charade, you'll probably like Hopscotch. Thief here, Michael Mann, R.I.P. James Caan. Pink Floyd's The Wall. I love this movie, but I do have to say that the superior version is obviously Nostalgia Critic's The Wall. Nostalgia Critic's The Wall just blows this one out of the water. Also, I just saw Roger Waters perform live, and it was pretty good. Creepshow. I know that Red Letter Media has been talking about Creepshow a lot, so, we'll probably hear more in-depth stuff about Creepshow on their channel than you hear from me. Scarface. I remember with Scarface, my high school actually banned us from wearing Scarface t-shirts. The Hunger, another David Bowie, Catherine Deneuve, Susan Sarandon's Tony Scott film. It's a vampire movie. Chud. I made a video on Chud. And really the only reason I bought Chud was just because of its name. I bought it and then I kind of had to justify it to myself that I bought this movie. So I made a video on it. Love Streams, another Cassavetes. I talked about Cassavetes at the beginning of this video here. Groundhog Day and Stripes, two Bill Murray, Harold Ramis classics. Lost in America, that's a Albert Brooks classic. Really funny movie, road trip movie. True Stories. True Stories is one of my favorites. This is done by the lead singer of Talking Heads, David Byrne. And it takes place in this town in Texas. And it's a very quirky movie. It's definitely got David Byrne's fingerprints all over it. It's got a soundtrack, made by the Talking Heads, but sung by the different cast and characters. And the movie is funny. It's poignant. It's lighthearted. So much to love about True Stories. Labyrinth. Come on. Labyrinth. Also, RoboCop. What's there to say about... what can I say about RoboCop? It's awesome, right? For All Mankind is a documentary about the Apollo missions, and it kind of splices in footage from all the different Apollo missions. And what's interesting is that it makes it seem like we're going through the motions of one trip to the moon, but it's spliced in with all the different Apollo missions. Silence of the Lambs. Silence of the Lambs is probably one of the best kind of crime thrillers. Anthony Hopkins' turn as Hannibal Lecter is captivating, and something that one of my acting coaches would tell me is that he's only in the film for like 11 or so minutes, but he never blinks his eyes when he's on camera, so he seems like that much more intense. Like just the really subtle thing of just not blinking makes him like way more of an intense character. Deep Cover. I just covered Deep Cover in my video. Falling Down. I covered Falling Down in my Literally Me video, which I think everybody who's subscribed to me has watched, so I probably don't have much else to say. King of the Hill. Actually, I got this. I haven't gotten around to watching it yet, so Soderbergh is hit or miss for me. I don't know why I ended up buying King of the Hill, but I'll get around to watching it. I watched Schizopolis. I did not like that. The Shawshank Redemption. Yeah, I think it's a solid movie. I don't remember, I don't know if it still is, but it was like number one movie on IMDb top 250. It's not the best movie of all time, but it's a solid movie. Crumb. This is a really interesting film about Robert Crumb by Terry Zwigoff. and Robert Crumb's like whole really screwed up family. It's it's one of the best like portraits of an artist through a documentary. Dark City is hella underrated. If you like The Matrix, you have to watch Dark City. That's Alex Proyas and Kiefer Sutherland stars. Here's the Criterion edition of Armageddon. Yes, Michael Bay's Armageddon is in the Criterion collection. And I saw this at a thrift store, and I had to get it for the meme, I guess. So now we're over here. We're at The Matrix. It's The Matrix. Almost Famous. Yeah, it's Almost Famous. American Psycho. Of course, I have a copy of American Psycho. Kung Pao Enter the Fist. I've seen that movie I don't know how many times. Kung Pao, like as a kid, was one of my favorite comedies. Napoleon Dynamite, Be Kind, Rewind. Both of those, like some of my favorite comedies as a kid. I watched them all the time. Batman Begins. Everyone's seen that. Synecdoche, New York. Depressing, but I do like Charlie Kaufman. The PBS version of Macbeth, it's exactly what you think it is. Midnight in Paris, that's also Woody Allen. That might be one of my favorite Woody Allens. Owen Wilson, going back in time in Paris, hanging out with like Hemingway and Dali and like all these kind of, characters from the 20s. And it's about how we have nostalgia for times in which we don't live, but how that nostalgia is really misplaced. It's a funny movie. It's also pretty thought-provoking. Take Shelter, that's Jeff Nichols. Probably Jeff Nichols' best movie. Michael Shannon is a guy who sees visions of the apocalypse, and he becomes a prepper. Spring Breakers. Spring Breakers is, I think, an underrated film. I think it's a misunderstood film, and I think it's one of A24's best movies. And it's definitely James Franco's best performance. It's this night. It's a fever dream of Florida, and it really, I think, is a really great satire / horror that kind of criticizes a lot of our modern culture, especially in colleges. The Place Beyond the Pines, that's Derek Cianfrance. Ryan Gosling, literally me, obviously. Foxcatcher, that's Bennett Miller. Maybe that's his name. He also did Moneyball and Capote. Again, Foxcatcher is just as solid as the other ones. And I think I bought Foxcatcher just because part of it takes place in Pensacola, which is where I'm originally from. Inherent Vice, that's actually my least favorite PTA. I have other PTA movies, but they're in like a storage unit, I think, in Florida. So I'll have to get those back soon. Joe, another movie, Joe, is the Nicolas Cage Joe. And I talked about that in my video on Nicolas Cage. It Follows. That's a really nice indie horror film that I think I saw at Sundance several years ago. I like the aesthetic of it. I like how we don't really know what the who the monster is, but I think that it's pretty clever having it as like a sexually transmitted monster. Love and Mercy. There are not enough people talk about Love and Mercy. This is a biopic about Brian Wilson from the Beach Boys, and Paul Dano and John Cusack both play as Brian Wilson in different stages of his life. It is tender. It is dreamlike. It is actually, the cinematographer is Robert Yeoman, who does all the Wes Anderson movies. Highly recommend it. Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. Here's my hot take. Mission Impossible now is much better than James Bond. I'm much more excited for Mission Impossible movies than James Bond films. The Black Coat's Daughter, Green Room, The Monster. Talked about that in my A24 video. The End of the Tour. That's the dude who did Spectacular Now. It's about David Foster Wallace. I think it's a good movie. Ghost Story, made a video on that. Nightcrawler, gonna make a video on that. Me and Earl and the Dying Girl. That's literally me. I was literally the main guy, Thomas Mann's character, when I was in high school. You can probably guess that. You Were Never Really Here, that's Joaquin Phoenix. And he's a army vet who's like saving this girl from being human trafficked. Again, that's probably another Literally Me movie. John Wick 3, I don't know why I own this. I don't actually care for John Wick 3. I don't think I've ever watched the whole thing. I think I watched half of it twice, and I just kind of get bored. Cuck. Cuck is such a great movie. Cuck 2019. Look, you can't beat this movie. This is honestly probably the best film I own. Hands down. Ad Astra, again, made a video on it. Joker also made a video on that. Okay, I'm just going to have Cuck on display here. Alex's War. My friend Alex Lee Moyer made this documentary, so shout out to her. Then we have Frank Capra, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. It happened one night. I mean, yeah, Frank Capra made classics. We have the BBS collection, so that's The King of Marvin Gardens, The Last Picture Show, Drive, He Said, A Safe Place, 5 Easy Pieces, Easy Rider, Head. Head is this really weird movie that Jack Nicholson and Bob Rafelson made for the Monkees. I showed that to Rusty Cage and Emp Lemon when I was hanging out at Rusty's place, and they had no idea what was going on, but it's kind of like, you should not have an idea of what's going on during that movie. It's insane, but I love it. Easy Rider. Easy Rider is like this descent into kind of the dark shadow of America. And of course, the dark shadow of America, like the pit of hell of America's New Orleans, considering that I watched Easy Rider in New Orleans once, and I was like, yep, this is New Orleans. 5 Easy Pieces is one of my all-time favorites. It's one of the best Jack Nicholson performances, but that's rivaled by The King of Marvin Gardens, which is Jack Nicholson and Bruce Dern. Both of those movies, I think, are just must-watches. They're must-sees if you're a fan of 70s cinema, if you're a fan of Jack Nicholson. The Last Picture Show is Peter Bogdanovich, and again, I mean, what can I say, like, that hasn't been said about The Last Picture Show? The last movie, I just talked about that in my video. The Graduate, absolute classic. Very, very much influenced a lot of, like, really good comedies like Rushmore. McCabe, Mrs. Miller, Nashville, Shortcuts to Player. These are Robert Altman. I'm a big fan of Robert Altman. Probably out of the pick here, I'd say Nashville was probably my favorite. His Girl Friday, I don't know. This is definitely out. This needed to be back there a little bit, but His Girl Friday is a great movie about journalists. It's like this, like, it's one of those like fast talking sort of like Hollywood Golden Age movies, right? Saturday Night Fever, that's an early John Travolta fun movie. American Graffiti, that's early George Lucas, actually. He directed it, and it's slice of life teen comedy. Really endearing movie. We have Mishima, A Life in 4 Chapters, and The Card Counter. And then we go to Martin Scorsese, so it's Paul Schrader to Martin Scorsese. I've been wanting to do a video on Mishima for a while. I love Paul Schrader's writing. I love a lot of his movies. Mishima might be my favorite of Paul Schrader's movies, but I really did like The Card Counter. That came out pretty recently. Taxi Driver, of course, I've talked about Taxi Driver on a few times, I think. Raging Bull, Last Temptation of Christ, Age of Innocence, The Irishman. And this is a guy that people say only makes mob movies. And you know what? Martin Scorsese is right about what he says about Marvel films. But who's even more right is the next person up here, and that's Francis Ford Coppola. We have the Godfather movies, Apocalypse Now and Rumblefish. Francis Ford Coppola said that they're not just amusement park rides, they're despicable. I agree with him on that. And, the guy who made Apocalypse Now, you have to sort of take what he says and say, like, maybe I should weigh what he says. Yeah, so, I love Coppola. So, I have the Apocalypse Now final cut, the redo, the original, all the Godfathers, and Rumblefish. So now we move here to, can we see this where I'm pointing at? Yeah. So now we move here to Terrence Malick, who might be my favorite director, certainly out of the Terrence Malick films. Out of every film I think ever made, The Tree of Life is my all-time favorite movie. And that was shot here in Austin and just south of Austin in a town called Smithville. But The Tree of Life is my all-time favorite movie. Hidden Life was also really great. He kind of went off a bit. I thought he kind of lost his way a little bit with Song to Song and Knight of Cups. Even though Knight of Cups was really cool, it didn't have the same emotional impact as Tree of Life. But with his earlier films, Badlands, Days of Heaven, The Thin Red Line, The New World. I mean, The Thin Red Line is, I think, my favorite World War II movie of all time. And then Days of Heaven and Badlands are just this great mix of beautiful, but also just captivating. Now for a very different kind of filmmaker, we have Sam Peckinpah with Straw Dogs, and then Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia and Cross of Iron. Straw Dogs is notorious. It's definitely in that category of shocking cinema. Dustin Hoffman, and it takes stars in it. It takes place in England, and it includes some very disturbing scenes and very disturbing violence. And it's kind of infamous for that, but I also think it's a very interesting sort of depiction of how one maybe cannot escape violence and the nature of violence. Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia, though, I think is actually more shocking in its violence, because it's who's the main actor here? It's War Notes. Yeah, so it's War Notes, and he's trying to find Alfredo Garcia, who has a hit out on him from like a cartel, and he needs to bring the head of Alfredo Garcia to the cartel to get money. And it becomes way darker than you could imagine just from this. And then Cross of Iron is about the Germans fighting the Russians on the Eastern Front, and this kind of like losing war, and kind of the nature of war and the nature of like why you fight for your nation. It's brutal, but I think it's a good movie. Repo Man here is a classic by Alex Cox. It's kind of in the same vein as like a lot of like 50s sort of schlocky sci-fi movies, so I like it. Breakfast Club, 16 Candles as John Hughes. Breakfast Club and 16 Candles both have their fair share of cringe in them, especially the Breakfast Club. But at the same time, they are like nice movies. They're nice movies. City Streets, Love Me Tonight. That's Ruben Mamoulian, and I honestly, City Streets, I thought that's Gary Cooper, was a nice like really early gangster film, and Love Me Tonight is like a romantic sort of musical thing. It's fine. Okay, here we go. Halloween and The Thing, two of the best horror movies of all time. So I have a couple different versions of The Thing and then Halloween. And then Halloween, I think this is Halloween 2018. I really hate it when these reboots, like they don't, or legacy sequels just have the same name, because then I'm like, okay, which Halloween is this? I don't know. I don't like that. But I thought Halloween 2018 was I thought it was pretty good. It's not as good as the original, but I thought it was pretty good. So now here's a couple Coen brothers. We have Blood Simple, Miller's Crossing, Inside Llewyn Davis. I think my favorite Coen brothers movie is Inside Llewyn Davis, and then maybe that's on par with No Country for Old Men. I've seen every Coen brothers movie. I watch all of their films. I'm a big fan. So then we have Ernst Lubitsch, Designed for Living, To Be or Not to Be. To Be or Not to Be is such a funny film. Jack Benny and Carol Lombard. And it's about these actors in, I believe, Warsaw. After the Blitzkrieg, the Germans took Poland, and they're trying to get out of Poland. And they were doing this like play making fun of the Germans and the Nazi party. And so they have all the uniforms, so they dress up as Nazis to try to steal a plane to get out of Poland. And it's like this screwball comedy. It's hilarious. So speaking of screwball comedies, we get to Wes Anderson. All of his films. Again, I think that it's pretty obvious I'm a big fan of Wes Anderson. I've made a few videos. I made a video on Moonrise Kingdom. I made a video on The French Dispatch. And my favorite Wes Anderson movie probably still is Rushmore. But I also love Moonrise Kingdom and I would say The French Dispatch. I mean, but like I pretty much there's no movie of his that I hate. I'd say my least favorite is The Royal Tenenbaums though. So here's some Hal Ashby. So Harold and Maude, The Last Detail, Shampoo, and Being There. Hal Ashby really had this knack for having this very kind of understated style of comedy. And The Last Detail, I think, is Jack Nicholson's funniest performance, or one of his funniest performances. Being There, though, is, I think, one of the all-time like American classics, and considering it's Peter Sellers playing as Chauncey Gardner, and it's this satirical, but it's a satire of American politics and American society, but it is done with a level of tenderness to it that he has to all of his movies. He has it to Harold and Maude as well. And I think that's really what I like about his movies. It's a satire. His films are satirical. They're very critical, yet there is a softness to his movies, and there's a sort of realistic quality to his films as well. So The Virgin Suicides is Sofia Coppola, I don't know. Yeah, Sofia Coppola. Probably my favorite Sofia Coppola. Or maybe second favorite to Lost in Translation. I know that's kind of a basic bitch sort of take, but then we have Noah Baumbach, Kicking and Screaming, The Squid and the Whale. You probably know Noah Baumbach from Marriage Story. He's coming out with a new movie this year. I don't know what it's called, but White Noise or White Light or something. And he made the Meyerowitz Stories on Netflix. And he's a good filmmaker. He kind of sometimes comes across as like a kind of an offshoot of like Woody Allen. I know some people joke that like NYU teaches you how to make Noah Baumbach movies, and I guess that might be true. I don't know. But The Squid and the Whale, I think, is his best film. Now we got some David Fincher. I don't know where my copy of Gone Girl went. I have some. Again, this is most of my collection, but I don't know. I'm missing some copies of films here and there. Fight Club and Benjamin Button. Obviously, Fight Club is awesome. Like, obviously. So now let's come down here. You can sit down. It's probably easier here. We're getting near the end. Here. Am I still in focus?
Yeah.
Okay. We're getting near the end here. So this is my section for Richard Linklater. Slacker, Dazed and Confused, Before Trilogy, Waking Life, Scanner Darkly, Boyhood, Everybody Wants Some. Yeah, I mean, I've done also a couple videos on Richard Linklater, So I talked about Scanner Darkly and Waking Life in my video for Apollo 10.5. I think my very first video was on Slacker, and then I did a video on Boyhood. So I've said a lot about Richard Linklater on this channel, and obviously I also live in Austin, so I actually went and saw him talk about a Peter Bogdanovich movie called Nickelodeon. It was really cool. He did that at the Austin Film Society. So here's Sam Raimi here, Evil Dead 2, Army of Darkness. Love both these movies. They're so fun. Again, these are like Halloween, go-tos for me. Jim Jarmusch. Stranger Than Paradise, Dead Man, Ghost Dog, The Way of the Samurai. I initially was actually going to have Ghost Dog, The Way of the Samurai in my 10 movies you have to watch video, but I took that out for some reason. It's like this cool where it's like Forrest Whitaker is like a hitman in New Jersey, but he lives by the Bushido, like he lives like a samurai, and he gets like on the bad side of the mafia. So it's kind of like Le Samurai. It's definitely inspired by Le Samurai. It's a fun movie. Dead Man, I think, is Johnny Depp's best role as William Blake in the town of like Machine, and Iggy Pop is in it. It's such a weird Western. Alfred Molina is also in it. Fishing with John is like the ultimate comfy sort of thing to watch. It's John Lurie taking out actors, directors. So he takes out Jim Jarmusch, he takes out Willem Dafoe, Dennis Hopper, and a couple others, just to go fishing. And it's just like super comfy stuff. I think that they used a clip from this in SpongeBob episode of Hooky. And yeah, so so maybe you haven't seen this, but you might have seen that little clip because it was used in SpongeBob. So here's my Orson Welles collection from Citizen Kane. 3 copies of Citizen Kane, and there's a reason I have 3 copies of Citizen Kane. I had this copy initially. This was like the Blu-ray that you could get, and then Criterion released their version, so I pre-ordered it, and then they said the Blu-ray for it was like messed up or something, so they sent me like another version to make up for that. So it's not that I bought it 3 times. I bought it twice. Magnificent Ambersons. I'm really hoping that the footage from Magnificent Ambersons that was lost comes out and we can watch the movie how Orson Welles intended us to watch it. The Stranger. This is probably my least favorite Orson Welles movie is The Stranger. It's still a fun little movie. Lady from Shanghai is iconic just for the Hall of Mirrors scene. Macbeth. I think this is one of the best adaptations of Macbeth. And I think that this adaptation of Macbeth really inspired Joel Cohen's The Tragedy of Macbeth. I definitely saw a lot of parallels there. Othello, Orson Welles is great at his Shakespeare adaptations. Touch of Evil is, of course, just like one of the best noirs I think ever made. Chimes of Midnight. I think that Orson Welles, his favorite movie of his was Chimes of Midnight. I can see why. It's a really, really good movie, and it's a movie that's fun. It's epic. It's Shakespearean, so you have to kind of like Shakespearean type stuff to like it. But if you like Shakespearean type stuff, you'll really like it. The Immortal Story, which was like a TV movie he made, it's still a really great film. F for Fake, which is a video essay / documentary. It's got this kinetic energy to it, this like weird energy to it. And he's like, you don't know what's a lie and what's real. It's really fun. F for Fake is just it is quite the film. The movie I'm missing is Mr. Arkadin or Confidential Report. I don't have that movie, but otherwise I think I have a complete collection of Orson Welles. So here's the complete Metropolis. Fritz Lang, a shout out to Pastor. One of my subscribers sent this to me. Thank you very much for that. Metropolis is one of the best sci-fi silent films. Ministry of Fear. This is a little bit of a maybe a lesser Lang. It's like a spy thriller. It's still pretty fun. Alien's like one of my all-time favorite horror movies. I mean, it's one of the best. It's one of the best sci-fi horror movies. I mean, there's a lot to be said that maybe Aliens is better, but I think that both of them are really great. So, Enemy, I talked about that in my A24 horror movie. Arrival, that's also Villeneuve. It Comes at Night, Waves. This is It Comes at Night and Waves. That's what's his name? Trey Edward Schultz. Waves I thought was really underrated. Trey Edward Schultz actually I think was a PA on The Tree of Life. I think that A24 has done Trey Edward Schultz pretty dirty with how they marketed his films, but I think he's a really great filmmaker. Hereditary, Midsummer. Hereditary is definitely better than Midsummer, but both are pretty solid horror films. And then down here we have the movies that I don't talk about. Which is all the video game movies that I bought for my video about why video game movies suck. The two movies that I'm missing, I actually don't know where they are right now, are my, I'm going to stand back up if you want to stand back up with me, Mr. Cameraman. There we go. We're good. The two movies that I'm missing here, I actually don't know where they are right now, are my Blade Runner 2049 and Blade Runner. Maybe I lent them to a friend. So that sometimes happens, I believe in having physical media because I like, not having to rely on streaming services. Also, if you watch something on a Blu-ray, it's going to look better than if you watch it on Netflix. That is a fact. But also it's, people come over, they like to look at the films. It starts a lot of conversation. And Some of the movies are a little bit harder to find, and, I can lend it to them and they can watch it and we can all discover films together and have a great time just, loving cinema. So that's basically my collection of movies. I mean, missing a few, but this is probably 99% of them. I hope that you all enjoyed listening to me just ramble on and on and on about the different Blu-ray collections that I have. And, this is the work of about 11 years of collecting, so this is a long time, coming. And I'm guessing that by the time I'm 28 now, so I'm guessing by the time I'm like 35, I'll have to have way more shelves. I'm already running out of space. But anyways, I hope you all enjoyed the video. And as always, I've been the Kino Corner, and I'll see you all in the next video.